This.
I like the power of having two bottles of water. Kind of gives me a level of distinction, I find, in this event.
Yeah, I only got one.
Power.
Sorry.
Power.
You want wine? Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel today. Maybe you'd like to speak a few words about yourself before, because some few words about yourself first.
Just hello, it's a real pleasure to be here, etc.
Alright, so let's get down to business then. Alright, so I guess the first question that most people will ask you when you come to the convention is not Uncanny or Generation Hope, but about Phonogram 3. Alright, let's get out of the way first.
The first question people actually ask for me at a con is normally, why are you here? Get out of my room, you're annoying me. Phonogram 3 is awkward. I mean, Phonogram was a book that me and Jamie was incredibly passionate about. And in the collected editions, it sells really well, and we get checks and from Image, which are nice, because the checks are nice. But to actually get to the point of a collected edition, you have to basically go for like the 6 months it takes to do the comic. And the problem being, since there's no cash coming in there, Jamie can't eat, and Jamie, he doesn't eat much, but Jamie eats very expensive, very small portions of food. And he also buys shoes and hats. So we just can't get to the point where we can make some money. You know what I mean? And that was from the previous season, so there's no way to get there. And when we got to that point, it's like, well, we have to go and do other stuff now. And since our calendars filled up, there was no chance to do Phonogram 3, even if money fell through the skies, like golden coins. So the answer is basically, advanced capitalism killed us again. You never know though. It's like, I'm probably still in denial, as in I refuse to accept the idea I will never do a Phonogram 3. But realistically though, fuck realism though, it's not likely. So don't hold your breath, because it's a stupid idea to do. You'll die,
We have like Matt Fraction with Casanova on the Icon imprint right now in Marvel. And now you're working with Marvel, and Kelby's working with Marvel. Isn't there a chance with Icon then?
It's a different sort. I mean, what Matt did with Icon, I don't think Phonogram's that sort of book, and it's the element of Jamie also wants to do other things. I mean, the great, as a writer, I'm writing like 3 books for Marvel a month, or I was, and I'm also doing some indie work, so I'm like lots of different sorts of work. Whilst Jamie might have, if Jamie's going to draw 6 issues, that's 6 months of his life. He can only choose to do so many projects. So it's like, even if money fell from the sky, money is not the real problem. The real problem is, of course, scheduling and that kind of thing. And that's basically it. It's a shame, and I'm really hoping, I've got more indie work coming out next year, and I know Jamie has some really interesting things planned. So even if we don't do Phonogram 3, we'd hope to do something as good as Phonogram 3.
Because it's quite cute that Jamie's now doing X-Men, the kind of the reboot of the X-Men, and you're on Uncanny, but you're just still both working on different books. Do you kind of wish you were working with him on more books?
The problem with working with Jamie, it means actually talking to Jamie, and engaging him in social, and pretending to like him. Okay, it's just, and that leads, eventually, bile goes in your throat. I much prefer it at the moment when we kind of do like 1 issue at a time, and then I can just ignore him for like 5 months, and then like come back to him. I mean, so joking aside, I'm not actually joking. We have done quite a lot of like 1-issue projects, and like Siege Loki and the Generation Hope issue you have on the table there, and it's just really good when we work together in that way, because we do understand each other in that in a kind of Morrissey and Mark kind of like band play. It kind of really feels very natural to us. And it's actually like, Siege Loki is basically the origin story of Journey into Mystery. That's where everything sort of, came together and made me understand what I wanted to do with Loki. So he remains my, I don't want to say muse, because that implies what to do with him.
Wife's right there somewhere.
Yeah. he remains my wife's face is like, I would be surprised if I never did anything big with Jamie ever again.
Because one thing that I think you all do very well together is silent issues, where there's no strange. I mean, not that you're bad.
So what you're saying is when I shut up, Jamie's okay.
I'm not saying that, but because you have to plot it for him and all that. Because like the issue of Phonogram, Kid with Knives, and Generation Hope, where there was no dialogue whatsoever, and this issue of issue now, Generation Hope, that was where the impact was most felt. When I saw it.
It's kind of like, I was chatting, an artist like Jamie, and this is kind of, every artist has strengths and weaknesses, and you know, they've all got their own abilities, and part of being a comic writer, at least in my opinion, is being able to look at the artists and trying to get the best from them. It's kind of, most people, quite a lot of people think the artist is a director in comics, and some people think the writer is a director, and I tend to think it splits the responsibilities. In the same way, you're giving like your cast cues, basically trying to get Jamie to get the characters to perform. Jamie is all the actors, and I'm telling the actors how to feel and act. Jamie is just an incredible expression. You know, how he works faces. I can write a panel where I can do a very subtle expression, which is very hard to explain, and I know Jamie will be able to sell that expression with the subtleties required. And other artists just don't, you know, it's not, no offence to them, Jamie is supernaturally good at this. So I know I don't need a dialogue line to sell the scene. And I'm a big believer in minimalism. I will do the least amount of, you know, the most effective art is the least amount to take the effect you want. And that just gives it, you know, elegance basically. And that's why I tend to shut up when Jamie's around. A silent panel, speak 1,000 words, and all that kind of cliche bullshit sort of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you spoke about your indie work again. So I mean, this time it's with Avatar, right?
Yeah. Is it better if I speak like this or like this? This. Okay. Sorry, it makes me feel like Chuck D, in like I'm doing a gig. Avatar. Yeah, I'm doing some work with Avatar, which is two series. One of them's been announced. It's called The Heat. It's basically a cop show set on Mercury, which is a pun, not a very good pun, but the rest of it's quite good. And the other series hasn't been announced yet, but it's kind of alternative historical fiction, emphasis on the word fiction. And there's hopefully going to be another book, which I can't really talk about yet, but that's also historical fiction, but of a more authentic bent. It's kind of set in the classical period, and it's kind of a vaguely socialist reading of a historical event. And, you know, and of course Phonogram 3.
One day.
No.
So I mean, you have your Avatar work, you have your Marvel work, so you're dropping Generation Hope?
Yes, that has just been announced. I'm leaving Generation Hope on issue 12, which is, it's just a kind of a situation where I was doing 3 books for Marvel, and they're doing a lot of double ships at the moment, and that basically means that, you know, occasionally you just have to write twice as many books of one of these books. So I can handle 3 books a month for Marvel quite easily, but I can't handle 5 books a month for Marvel quite easily. And rather than risk the quality dropping, I thought it'd be a good idea to move off. And there was kind of like, there's a few other things, but really I just wanted to sort of cut my workload a bit more. And so I could like concentrate on 2 books and write more of them, and also leave room for the other stuff I'm doing as well. It's a shame, but you know, I kind of originally planned Generation Hope like to be a year, and then go to a new status quo. So I had my basic structure for a year, which I didn't change at all, and now it's just that James Asmus is going to be taking the kids on. And I kind of like it that, you know, I raised the kids to 12, and now they're like teenagers going off to cause trouble. You know, I feel like a very proud mother. I raised them very badly. Poor kids, poor kids.
I mean, like, okay, so when you began Generation Hope, you had this Kenji character that pretty much is Tetsuo from Akira.
I don't know what you mean. It was like, the point of Kenji, and it's one of the things, Kenji's about the idea of art and influences, and the idea that are your inspirations visible? And for Kenji, he had the ability to turn into anything he wanted, and he actually just turned into stuff he'd seen on television once, or stuff he'd read once. So in other words, he is this incredibly famous artist. In actual fact, his subconscious fear, and what really haunts him, is the old stuff he used to think. So it's like, it's talking about, you know, how important this was to him. This is the only way he could define when his body started to warp, this is the only framing reference he had. So the initial scenes, yes, they were very clearly riffs, you know, riffs and complete homages, a very open homage. Yeah. I mean, the first captions, I'm becoming art. It's like, and I thought I was being a bit unsubtle, but a lot of people didn't kind of get it. If I rewrote that, I think I would have been far less subtle. I would have had Akira posters in his room. You know, it'd been that kind of like, you must understand that this is, I don't expect people not to notice. And of course, you know, and this has been his theme. It's like, relationship to his art, and can he ever transcend that, or is he stuck to be this forever? And and his physicality is definitely, what he does now is different to how he did in the first issue, because he started framing it a different way, and it's kind of is a metaphor for autistic growth. It's kind of what I thought of Kenja. That makes, I don't think I've ever actually said that outright, but yeah, there's a reason why he's a bit pretentious. He's pretending.
One more question from me first. So right now you've done like a lot of smaller characters from Marvel, like Beta Ray Bill, Batroc, like the Elite Club that has done Batroc before, right? So I'm just wondering, when you do these kind of characters, does it give you more freedom to work with them, or do you still have like a tight like whip at Marvel?
You probably have a little more freedom. I mean, if I wanted to like make Batroc, I don't know. I've turned the Juggernaut, Colossus into the Juggernaut. It's like, you'll be surprised by how much freedom you have on a big book. It's kind of like, you think that you're going to be very constrained, and you walk into, I want to do this, and they go, great. Because they're hiring you to have ideas, and that's the kind of the wonderful moment. I mean, the story I always tell is my first ever script for Marvel. An editor, I wrote this outline, gave it to him, and he came back going, yeah, this is really good, but can't we have this scene earlier? Can't we open with this scene? And in my head, I go, because this is what you fear, the editor rewriting your script, the editor not respecting you, this is going to be based, that's the kind of idea that some people have about how comics are written. So I stopped and said, no, we can't do that, because the structure means that if we throw it earlier, it creates a different effect for this scene, so we have to have it here. And there's a tiny pause, and then the editor goes, actually, yeah, you're right, and we move on. And that was kind of like the penny dropping. I said, no, they totally hired you because they respect your opinion. And that's, that is a small but very important thing. So yeah, they hire you to be, I mean, look at John Hickman on Fantastic Four. He's like, oh, I want to kill Johnny Storm, I want to do this. They pay you to think big, so you have freedom with big characters as much as you can. The small ones, I don't know, you could probably do more, but I think what I did with the characters is kind of like going them to the basics. I mean, Beta Ray Bill, he's a character who's an alien and a god simultaneously, and that's about religion and science, and he embodies these dichotomies. So I wrote a story about faith and reason, and revenge. And with Batroc Leap, I just, why does Batroc Leap has no powers apart from jumping and having a comic French accent. And he gets up every day and goes and fights, heroes, world-class heroes. What on earth motivates a guy like that? And I had an idea and wrote it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's my approach to almost all characters. I cut them down to the core and try to build off that, and then make them fight.
But what about like, Hulk Thor?
I mean, Hulk Thor. I mean, there's an example. That story is basically jocks versus geeks. And Spider-Man was basically a geek, Thor was basically a jock, and the story about how they felt guilty about that and their relationship with their parent figures. That's what the story's also hitting. That's just how I work. That's what I do.
All right. So, anybody have any questions?
My wife is laughing at me.
She doesn't believe you, I think.
It doesn't.
Anybody got any questions from the floor? I guess. Yeah. Anybody got a mic? I guess while we're waiting, one more question. Yeah. So you do a lot of music and comics together, like Phonogram. You have this CBGB one anthology. They've been nominated for a Harvey for, not you.
Yeah, it has been apparently.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you ever want to do anything about games and comics then?
I had a comic called Multimedium I did, which is about actually games journalism, about annoyingly Infinite Vacation. It was based on a very similar idea. So Nick F. Spencer.
Yeah, non-player, right?
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Occasionally, I've got an idea which is basically Audition meets The Sims, and that's a story I've always wanted to write, but that's an incredibly depressing story as well. But you never know, I get my inspiration. There's a game called Solium Infernum, which is about devils warring in hell. And I wonder how much did that influence, like, my forerun, because I was playing a lot of it then. You get inspiration all over the place. Is the mic up and ready?
All right.
Hello, hi. I just want to ask you, with Phonogram, you have very specific music that you write to, and do you still have that for your work with Marvel, like when you're doing Loki or you're writing Thor? Do you have any music that you listen to, or you have playlists?
I have kind of. the second you start talking about music as totemic values, you start sounding like Alan Moore and being a bit crazy. But, yes, that's exactly what I do. I quite often have songs which I relate to characters, and I kind of listen to on repeat in terms of specific moments. And I listen to songs on repeat anyway, as my neighbours will tell you. But you know,
or your wife, right?
I put out, there's a Journey to Mystery Spotify playlist out there. In fact, it's also on YouTube, so there's a kind of songs which vaguely inspired like the first 5 issues. And there's also a Generation Hope and Uncanny X-Men playlist, which aren't public yet. And when the first issue of the relaunch of Uncanny, I'll be putting it out there. And when Generation Hope issue 12 finishes, I'll be putting Gen Hope playlist up as well. But yeah, you know, there's certain songs which are always kind of resonant. Namor is Power by Kanye West, which I put on loudly. Hidden by Those Dancing Days is Hope. Cold War by Janelle Monáe is Edie from Generation Hope. Stuff like that. So yes, is the answer.
Is Run Like Wolves still for
yeah, it's teal. Yeah.
Teal, right? Alright, next question.
Overview of the
Speaking of Taeyeon, right? In the recent issue of Generation Hope, when he went on stage, went on the pulpit to defend himself in the courtroom, I think that was pretty amazing. How you took the idea of evolution and a primitive form of evolution and gave him like super eloquent instead.
It's like, that's the thing, is like, I basically kept Taeyeon a complete idiot for 6 issues, and it's like kind of like, I knew what he really was, so it has to be this very basic idea before you show the more elaboration. With Taeyeon, I was interested in the idea of what is intelligence, and you know, maybe intelligence is overrated. Maybe what we count as thoughts is actually an epiphenomenon of like some machinery. And there's lots of science which supports that view of human nature. So Taeyeon is like a weirdly aggressive view about free will. In fact, there's a character I'm doing in the X-Men relaunch. I'm also talking about questions of free will and determinism. So yeah, these are things that interest me.
All right, next question.
And fighting. That's good.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Kieron. Welcome to Singapore.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
Anyway, about writing now. X-Men has been known to be one of the hardest books to write. And I know some writers that personally doesn't want to get into the book of X-Men because it concerns a lot of research and a lot of history to the Claremont days. How were you able to actually pull this off with all the guts and all? How did you research? What were the preparations before you handled the book?
Panicking, always. You know, if you can't trust anything, you can trust panic. I just read. I read a lot. It's one of the interesting things, we live in the internet age. There's a lot of better resources in terms of like, okay, I want to do a story about. Actually, the first arc's an easy one. I did based on astonishing characters, and in fact that's a limited run, and I'd read it anyway, so that's something I'm very strong with. But when researching. Storm. I was researching Storm, who's a character I was quite unsteady with to begin with. And you know, you can go and basically find out what are the quote-unquote important issues. What do people really talk about Storm? So you can focus in there. When you take to a wider front, which is, you know, that's just method. I think the problem with X-Men is that you've got 200 people on an island, and they're all basically got fans. So on some level, you can't win. My basic sort of approach in terms of thinking about X-Men stories was always cutting it to the bone. As in, I want to not just have lots of cameo, not mislead people. Kind of write a firm arc-based story. As in, issue 1 of the story, this introduces the themes. By issue 4, they're all resolved. The status quo for certain characters has changed significantly. There's been some other details to amuse everyone else. Next arc, I re-establish. So that means I want to be able to, and the fact I'm reintroducing everything for every arc means you can pick up any arc individually and read it. So I'm writing very modularly, I'm writing with an eye to accessibility, and I'm writing focusedly on very few characters. The arc I'm doing at the moment, which is the Juggernaut attacking San Francisco, it's it's primarily about Emma, Sadie, the mayor, Cyclops, Colossus, Magic, Kitty, Emma, Namor, and actually Hope on the side, and they're the kind of the characters who are doing stuff, and everyone else is kind of more, they're the style, they're the special effects, they're the sense of scale. But the story, in terms of the emotional shape, is about these people and their fears and whether they overcome them or not. And that's the way you do it. It's like you cut it down to here is a story that anyone can understand. I mean, I was joking about. I wanted to write essentially a story my wife could read. In that, they should be able to pick up this. Somebody doesn't know those 500 issues, and that's the bigger problem because people think the X-Men are inaccessible for the same reason they're hard to write. And it's not. It's a hard job, but no one ever said it was going to be easy. And if it was hard, why the hell would I want to do it? Sorry, if it was easy, why the hell would I want to do it? If it was hard, the challenge is interesting.
So you worked with Matt Fraction for the beginning of your run on Uncanny, right? So he gave you a timeline to follow, or was there some guide that you followed, or did you just give up after 2 issues? Okay, I got my own thing.
It was weird. It's like Matt had a sort of Matt wrote obviously the first issue in that arc, and then Matt had I was very more. I don't want to say he did plot and I did script. In actual fact, it's more like he had a sort of plot, and then I hit the plot with a hammer to make it do something else. And then I wrote script, and then he said, no, that's wrong. And it was a lot more back and forth. So it was almost, might be the easiest way of saying I was resolving a situation Matt created, and then we collaborated on the specific solution. The problem is me and Matt have quite similar aesthetics. We're fans of each other's writing, so it's quite natural, It was fun, it was quite good to actually write Uncanny with somebody else, and so basically they take half the blame. So, I can get my teething problems out of the way, and he takes the blame for it. And I step in with a clean start, and people are okay with it. It's good. Matt Fraction, my flak jacket, all hostage dummy situation. I'm not saying Matt Fraction's a dummy.
All right. Any other questions?
Jamie McKelvey, he's a dummy.
Got it on camera? Over there.
X-Men is obviously a story. It's a very well-known story. It's got the reason why I suspect it's popular. I would posit is because it has several recurring themes that are analogous to real-life situations. Some things that come into mind, like the mutant registration program. It was reminiscent of Japanese internment for one thing. The West Coast of the United States during World War II. So my question is, I suppose, is there a strong thread? Is there a strong current of political awareness at Marvel? And how do real-world events?
It's a good question. Sorry, I thought that was the end of the question. Anything else? How do real-world events?
Yeah. How do real-world events?
These are Marvel aren't just people who read comic books, we're on the same websites, we're following the same news feeds, we're reading books, we're engaged with the world. And you take inspiration from where you can find it. One of my major influences on my X-Men run is the student riots towards the end of last year in the UK, which made me start thinking about youth and age and the system, and essentially people are estranged from the system. And I thought it was an interesting way of framing community in the 21st century. That's where, and you probably wouldn't really recognise that in my story, but that's what I'm kind of thinking about. That's interesting about the X-Men at the moment. Cyclops, a guy who is very early 30s, very late 20s, and he's the quote-unquote leader of the species. This is a book about youth, the ideas of youth, and how that relates to official authority, which are one of the many reasons I find interesting the schism with the fact he's gone for people younger than the X-Men, which is raising the question of age in a very different way. So that's just an example. You take inspiration where you can, and that just makes it natural. It's always been in the book. And sometimes it's more subtle than others. My arc of the X-Men, my current arc of the X-Men is a mob of bigots march towards San Francisco because it's full of evil people, and they want to burn it off the map. It's like, well, that's not a subtle story, But there's a power there, and there's I wouldn't like to think it's parasitic, as the idea of just doing a story around this to make you essentially feel a little bit better. I think it's about recognising the conflicts which are really, really human in the world. And people approach it in different ways. Does that make sense? I mean, the X-Men are really great one-size-fits-all persecution and alienation metaphor. You know, it can be age, it can be sexuality, it can be race, it can be any of these things. And that's why it's quite powerful. And especially the fact you ignore it. That these people are protecting the world that hates and fears them. The fact you will be better than those who despise you. And that's, as far as a kind of a subtextual message for a series goes, I've got nothing but love for that. Does that answer the question? Okay, I suppose. Mostly.
All right. Any other questions? Sorry. Question over there. Over there.
Okay, just to understand, I know that you have all these projects, and you also run a blog known as Rock Paper Shotgun, which is like game journalist blog. So just very curiously, with all these projects, it's a lot of work. So what keeps you going?
Caffeine, sleep. Actually, I don't work for Rock Paper Shotgun anymore. As in, like, I co-own it, so I'm still like a director, but I don't actually run it on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, there was totally a time when I was working a part-time job, running a blog, and also, writing 2 or 3 Marvel books a month. And it's weird, I think I'm lazy. That's the weird thing about it. As in, I'm aware of how much time I waste clicking refresh on the internet and playing games and sleeping. But I seem to do a lot of work, and I'm not quite sure how it happens. And part of me thinks, I'm just delusional, and I actually work all the time. And the other part of me actually thinks I'm just stupidly quick. So like, and then, the 10 minutes I spend in a day working is actually like 20 hours for everyone else. And I'm like the Flash or something. I don't know. It's easier for me to do it than not to do it, if that makes sense. It's really annoying for everyone who knows me. I just spend the time walking around and quoting articles I'm writing and sort of like pretending to be Dr. Doom in the kitchen. Like, oh, pitiful omelette, you shall not challenge Doom's mastery of the kitchen. So yeah, that's kind of it. It's good fun though.
All right. Any other questions, guys? Over here.
I always feel bad because the questions always go left, right, left, right.
You guys should sit together, right?
It's getting tired. I just feel sorry for the people carrying the mic.
Hi, I want to ask if there's any news of Jean Grey coming back.
I'm afraid she's still dead. It's like she was in the alternate dimension. Jean Grey was in X-Force recently, which was really good. Spoilers. No, there's no current plans as far as I'm aware. There's always, secret stuff no one may tell me, but it's kind of like, I don't, as much as, and everyone at Marvel loves Jean Grey, and they love the characters. This is the story I always tell about the X Summits, because they get all the writers together and talk about, where's the rough high-level plan for the next year or 2 years. And they're talking about the characters, and they're saying, well, Emma's going to do this, and and we're going to do, and Scott will do this and this. It's never like it's never like the Spider-Man. They're talking about not talking about the superhero names. They're always talking about the characters' first names. I mean, my first summit, I said White Queen, and I felt like I just, did a faux pas. These are people who really know the characters and really care about them. And it's like, for me, there's no point, there's not really a story in bringing Jean Grey back now. If you're going to bring Jean back, it's got to be a good story. And just bringing her back, no matter how much we love her, it's like, for me, it's pointless. I mean, if you were going to bring her back, it would have to be a really, really, really killer story. The same way, like, it's not when you kill a character, you kill them because it's meaningful to you. As you love them, therefore this is the best story I've got to tell, which involves them dying. In the same way, you can't just bring them back because it cheapens the death, it cheapens their life. Even someone like Phoenix, which includes the concept of resurrection. Does that make sense? I mean, I would hate, I would much rather her be dead than someone just bring her back in a rubbish way. Does that make sense?
So,
Okay.
Speaking of top secret projects, I mean, last time Matt Fraction was
I'm going to
here.
tell you.
I'm here. Last time Matt Fraction was here, he told us, he had something out in plans, something big, and then fear itself.
That is pretty big.
That was awesome. Do you have anything else planned other than the relaunch of Uncanny? Or can you not share?
The good thing is actually some of my biggest secrets are kind of out now, in terms of like the relaunch of Uncanny, the effects of Schism. I don't think people kind of... It's a shame I can't actually talk about how radical my approach to the relaunch is and what the team are trying to do.
Buy the comic.
Yeah, it's like kind of like, I'm sure we're doing interviews near the time and I've got some one-liners I'm desperate to say about it. But I can't really say. It's just like, it's very political, it's very aggressive, it's quite to the heart of the metaphor in a way I don't think people have ever done before. I hope not anyway, otherwise I'm in trouble. And it's, the kind of the big stuff then is the story, as in terms of where it goes. Like the first 10 issues are kind of like blitzkrieg, powerhouse, ideas. There's new characters, there's old characters completely reinvented. So a Journey to Mystery also is like, I've got a 40-issue plan for Journey to Mystery. I pretty much could write half the final issue now. And that's about the biggest plans which are available. Though, no, nothing super big, but there's controversial stuff I'll be doing. The indie book I'm doing next year, if it happens, will definitely get press and people will be kind of quite angry about it in lots of different ways. It's pretty much me picking a fight with a major creator. Alright.
Alright. Any other questions?
Probably shouldn't have said that.
Any other questions?
Great, I knew
This is nearby, yeah.
Alright, so congratulations on your wedding.
Thank you very much.
And your moderator also just got married recently. How has being married changed your perspective in writing? Has it even changed at all?
You're right when she sleeps.
It's like, I'll tell you what, it's like the weird thing about The Ring, as in it's like I became aware that my entire relationship with rings previously was in fantasy video games, as in rings were basically things that just gave you magical bonuses, as opposed to actual jewellery, which is strange, and that's probably a big change. And probably the biggest change is actually how natural, I'm not going to talk about how much I love my wife. No, it's like I love,
She's gagging.
Yeah. It hasn't changed anything except the fact that she's now legally able to take half my money if she left me. Win. But everything sort of changes. I mean, I was very soppy around the wedding, as you might imagine, because I'm an enormous sentimentalist, and you can see that I wrote my first Uncanny arc, Breaking Point, which is a story about the transcendence of love and the ability for people to overcome the worst in themselves and perhaps change. And it's an incredibly soppy, happy ending. And it's like, yeah, maybe a guy getting married. At the same time, the 4 arc I did, the small print, sort of the fine print, and that's about rings being used as a device to control people and contractual wrangling. And and that was around when I proposed. And it's like, what could have been on my mind? It's like, I was also doing my Marvel exclusive contract then as well. So it's like, my subconscious it's not exactly sub. It's anything I'm caring about or angry about or passionate about, it's right there on the page. Because if you don't care about your work, no one else will care about the work. And it's all fuel. Sorry.
Any other questions? Alright, I have one more here. So when you started with Kenji and Jen Hope, your first arc, that was pretty much your first long series that you were doing in Marvel, other than Kenny, which had a bit of help from Matt.
Sword was meant to be a long series.
Oh yeah. What was it like? This title is your own because the title is nobody else done it before. But it was launched at STGCC last year when you didn't even have a seat in the panel, then they brought you in. Yeah, I remember that. So what's it been like to start on Jen Hope? Big title.
It was weird. It was like new characters. I mean, new characters sell to the mainstream comic audience, and it's a team of completely new characters apart from Hope. And Hope isn't, she's not Wolverine. It's a hard sell, and you're trying to work out ways to efficiently communicate who these people are to everybody, and why on earth should you care about these 5 kids? And that's, the the first issue, you kind of like, I went to, my plan was, okay, straight into action. That was probably a mistake. And I was doing stuff like lots of captions for the characters, so at least in the first issue, everybody gets a speaking role and talking about how they feel about the world. So hopefully that is enough to hook on. You know, that's the sort of thinking, trying to make it as accessible as possible. And in the kind of like, and I viewed from then on in as a slow unveiling of the characters, the complex. I mean, for me, one of the bigger things about writing is all my characters have unstated motivation. Or rather, they keep the unstated motivation for as long as possible, and then eventually I might state it. As you know, why is Hope acting such a complete, you know, cow? You know, she's acting like a complete cow. There's probably a reason for it. Why is Kenji so shook up about certain things? I mean, like, one of the few things people have, you know, Kenji's dad committed suicide when he was young. And one of the things, actually, few people have noticed that Kenji isn't into, like, Kenji's inspiration isn't modern manga. It's like kind of quite old stuff. And it's because his dad was into it, you know, and that's not something that I would ever mention. But it's the fact that, you know, he sort of ties what his dad was into with his, you know, with this, and that's why it's such a traumatic memory. And that's kind of the unstated reason why he is a little bit in the head, because, you know, he's still processing that. And that's true, you know, that's the way I fundamentally approach a comic. And occasionally I'm very shallow characters, which is funny.
And you spoke about captions, right? So for Uncanny, every time you introduce a new character back into the issue, you have like Cyclops and you give him a really stupid subtitle.
Yeah, that Matt did this sort of the joke, and I stopped doing that because I was doing partially because it was such a Matt thing. As in, okay, I did like, you know, the 4 issues I did with Matt, I wrote a lot of those, so I got them all out of my system.
You won at him quite a lot, actually.
Yeah. It's never fun, and I got rid of them because Matt was using all the cast and he was trying to keep it rolling constantly, and as I said earlier, I wanted to concentrate each arc. So I had the idea of the intro page, so every issue, every arc, the artist does a bespoke page introducing the key cast of this arc. And so the information for the characters are front loaded on that one page, and then so I don't need to do those captions anymore. And I also thought it'd be quite nice to have like a bookend, as in the first page, the artist goes to town, does a page, can really express themselves. In fact, I saw Carlos's for the new series. His first page is like incredibly cool. It's like Mr. Sinister motif and the characters, very dramatic. Yeah, he's killing it. And that was my solution to the problem. Like, we talk about the size of the X-Men cast, you work out how to solve the problem. Basically.
Have you met Carlos yet?
I haven't met him in the flesh, no. I've only, I spoke to him on the internet via the meme of electricity. He's good. You know, he seems very nice.
Any other questions, guys? I mean, like, last time I used to work with Jamie, like, used to be like next to him pretty much. Were you? Oh, like
living next to him.
Live next to him.
No. People often get the idea that me and Jamie lived in the same house, in some kind of like in the same bed, like Bert and Ernie. I kind of like Bert and Ernie of British comics. It would be a great way of describing us. Who's Bert and Ernie? I think I'm Ernie actually. No, I'm Bert. I'm Bert actually. No, we lived on opposite sides of the country. I lived in Bath, Bristol. He was London. So we just on the internet every day, all day, pretty much. We do come from the same part of the country, though. We both come from small, completely, utterly useless towns in the Midland, and that's kind of informed both our work. As in, our work is very desperate because if we don't sell enough, we'll have to move back to the Midlands. So you know, it's like I consider my life a victory if I don't ever end up there. Yeah. So it's like suburban glamour. It's kind of driven by I've got at least a couple of story ideas which are a little bit like suburban glamour, which is Jamie's book. And suburban glamour is fundamentally about wanting to leave a small and useless town and not being sure, and the idea that you might be sucked back in. And I got I want to do a Uzumaki style horror about a town like Stafford. The idea of this, you know, essentially it often felt like a spiral sucking you in. So that kind of like that dark broodingness of like the small town. So yeah, so me and Jamie are very different in lots of ways. As in, he's good looking, but we share certain aesthetic and even moral preferences. As in, we kind of like we're nicer people than we actually pretend to be. we much prefer to be like mean, but it's like, you know, we're big softies. I'm not nice. I was lying about that.
So you've been working together with artists like on the internet from the beginning then?
Yeah, I met Jamie at a con. I was like at a small press con, and I had a table, my little photocopied books. Jamie walks up and goes, hello, and I go, hello, back. And he goes, want to see my art? And I go, yes. And he opens his art. And now what I think happens is that I think, he would be perfect for Phonogram. I will seduce him in slowly, and I'll eventually, across a period of months, talk him into doing Phonogram. And what he says happened, I went, ooh, I've got an idea for a comic called Phonogram, we should do it. And that was like our first exchange. And it took like 3 years after that to happen. But that was kind of, we found it, I mean, what an incredible random chance, you know, of a random artist who's just perfect for you. And for each other. So we, you know, we really helped each other, I think, in terms of like stretching and growing as creators. Count myself very lucky, you know, people say, oh, it's a shame Phonogram never went through a third series. You know, no, we were lucky. We got to do 2 series, and that's it's something we should be grateful. Like, you know, it's a book that changed my life. I do have to speak to Jamie though, which is the one bad thing. It's all right though.
Because I think one thing we noticed about Phonogram is that the first one is very deep into Britpop.
I thought you said very. I thought you were about to say very, very bad. No. The second one's better.
I would say that, but the first one is very deep into Britpop, whereas the second one is a lot more accessible, more modern music. Maybe what would have happened if you had launched it with the second series first? Do you think it would have been better?
The thing is, there was never definitely going to be a second series. It's like Phonogram is a kind of a book that has a momentum. Kind of. Oh my god, that's sinister. Sorry about this. I didn't realise it was an evil me lurking above you, like kind of like Big Brother. Wow. Phonogram is a book that compels. Now, are you going to take me seriously? Phonogram is a book that essentially compels. It's not like I would choose to do something like that. It's got to, the first book had to be about this, which is about dealing with. I'm somebody who always hated nostalgia. And Rubritannia is about me coming to terms with what nostalgia means and why it might be okay. It might not be the worst thing in the world. The thing with Phonogram, it's also a useful metaphor. I mean, Phonogram was like, when I did the first book, it did quite well, and it was basically David Cole's Britpop adventures. That's kind of how people thought of it. And it's like, that's not what Phonogram we wanted it to be. Phonogram was a book about music and magic. So for the second series, we deliberately said, we're going to go the other way. This will be a book, Cole's in it, but he's not the major character. Seven major characters, each one gets an issue. It's set in as close to the modern day as we can make it. It's like, you know, I'd written it all in 2007, so I wanted to make it as completely contemporary as I could. And you know, the opposite of that. So the idea to try to create the idea, this isn't just about Britpop, this is about music generally. I mean, the third series would have been about, primarily about 80s pop videos, and 80s pop videos meets kind of like weirdo underground fanzine culture, and would have mainly about Emily Astor, and would have been, it's all set in 2009. And the fourth, you know, if we did my main idea for the fourth series was actually set in 1893 and was basically essentially a Victorian set around the World Fair in Chicago. You know, the idea that this is a book about music and people and their relation to it, and we could have done anything. I mean, the story I wanted to set in a club in Stafford across 40 years, and the idea of like, you know, singles night across 40 years, including like generation of kids growing up in this town. You know, that's what Phonogram is about. Was a device I made up to talk about what I was interested in, how art changes you. You know, and art has changed us ever since. You know, a caveman banged a bone against the floor, and the other guy went, oh, I like that. You know, this is something it means to be fundamentally human.
So how do you select your tracks when you DJ them?
Oh man, I've only DJed 3 times in my life. It's a weird thing. People always presume I've done it more. Not because I'm any good, just because they presume I should have done it more. And I agree, the guy I based Seth Finger around, I was almost his silent girl, as in we were originally going to be DJing together, and I ended up having to go to America in the first week, so he got Silent Girl to join him. And they ended up just DJing like forever together. So yeah, so could have been very different. With the DJ, especially the places I've played, fundamentally the DJ's job is to both entertain and possibly inform. you know, primarily, honestly, if people aren't dancing, you're probably fucked up. You know, it's like, it's not about you being cool. You know, if you can be cool and make people dance, bargain. But in a real way, play Come On Eileen, if not, you know, or play Dancing Queen if you're really at that sort of place. This is about, that of course is the weird thing about, you know, Seth Binger as a character. He's a character who really believes that pop music only matters. As in, all that matters is that people dance to it and enjoy it. That's what he believes. But at the same time, he's a complete elitist. You know, he despises everybody. And that's the contradiction that drives the character. He's like, he's abstractly an altruist, but he's not very nice about it. And that for me is kind of what DJ is about, as in there's a mixture of both separation and aloofness, whilst also simultaneously, if your ass ain't moving, you've done a bad job. You know, and I also just like play random stuff I've never heard in a club and I want to hear. And it, you know, it clears the dance floor and I feel a bit bad.
All right, do you have any other questions, guys? All right. I think it's 3:30. Are we ending at 3:30? Right. Okay, guys. All right. I'd like to thank you once again, Kieron, for having a great talk. I think it was very informative, very humorous.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.
All right. So he was having his 3 issues just came out this week: Journey into Mystery, Generation Hope, and Uncanny X-Men. So if you haven't picked that up yet, this is the perfect week to start. I think they did that on purpose, right?
It's a beautiful timing. Yes, synchronicity. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.